And a great pleasure right now to welcome back to our show today a man who was with us a few years ago. Last time he stopped by in our area in Sarasota, but he'll be performing his Evening with Groucho show up in the Tarpon Springs Performing Arts Center coming up on Sunday, the 26th of February, 2 p.m. Show. Great to welcome back a very talented man, actor, writer, performer, singer, Frank Ferrante today. How are you, Frank?
I'm great. Thanks, Doug. Nice to hear you again.
Good to have a chance to talk to you again. We talked to you a few years ago when you were doing some shows at the Oslo here in Sarasota, but I just been kind of keeping track of you on your website and what's been going on with you. So you're kind of busy not only with the Groucho show. I know you do another show out in the West Coast where you play a different character, but I guess it's kind of Groucho. You kind of come back to him every once in a while, don't you?
I do. It's been a good part of my career over the last 25 years. And I think I must do between 30 and 40 one-nighters throughout the country and Canada a year. And so I've really been a great taste of the country doing the show. And I've been in a position, Doug, in which I'm able to continue to hone it and get, hopefully get funnier. And that's part of the process. It never ends. And it's good to be back. I played Florida. I think I've played more than 30 cities in Florida over the last decades.
Happened to see the interview you did. I think it might have been after you and I did our last talk on radio. I think 60 Minutes, or no, the CBS Sunday Morning Show did an interview with you about doing the Groucho show, and that was a very good, nice interview they did. I think you talked about how Arthur Marx, the Groucho's son, kind of presented you, I believe, with one of Groucho's cigar humidors, didn't he?
He did. I received a humidor from Arthur Marx that belonged to Groucho many years ago, back in the 80s, I believe. I've always been close to his family. It was Arthur Marx who saw me first in 1985 at USC, my alma mater, do a show about Groucho, and he hired me to play his father, and I did. And that show was written by Arthur Marx and Robert Fisher, and it moved to New York and London, and was taped for PBS television. I've been very fortunate, and it was a wonderful introduction to my field. Since then, I've been able to direct plays and other roles. But as you say, Doug, Groucho is a role that I continue to do over the years, and it's really a privilege. I've enjoyed it. I've played big towns, small towns, everything in between, and I feel grateful to be part of a pretty marvelous tradition. It's a grand tradition, and I find that so many people still respond to Groucho, young and old alike.
You happen to see the recorded version of this show. Got the video of it not too long ago, and it really is a great night of theater. It's not just the Groucho maybe people remember from the movies, but you kind of do the Groucho of the Bet Your Life years, and then you do the older Groucho. I think that's really kind of unique, the way you get the voice differences there. I mean, that's kind of a different take on Groucho.
Well, I did this show in New York and London, and the PBS show you're talking about. It was incredible. I did get to play Groucho Marx from age 15 to 85. It's a biographical piece. The piece I'll be doing in Tarpon Springs focuses on the younger Groucho, the very energetic, young Groucho. And the beauty of that show, Doug, is that a great percentage of it is improvised. I make sure that not only do I do the songs and the jokes and one-liners and the stories that pertain to that era of the 20s and 30s, talking about Chaplin and W.C. Fields and his brothers, but I try to convey what it may have been like to see Groucho live in 1935, 1934, and that's when the improv comes in. So every show is different. So when I'm there this weekend, that's what you'll get. You'll get every show has a fresh feel, and that's what makes it interesting for me after 400 cities and 25 years, is that every experience is unique, and the audience senses that. They like being in on the joke, and they like knowing that for their money they're getting a one and only experience. It's a great deal of joy to perform it still after all these years.
Yeah, I saw a clip of that portion of the show. It's on YouTube, where you go out in the audience and you're talking to a couple, I think, that are either got married or going to get married, and you do about 10 minutes with them. And I guess that's kind of fun for you, because by playing Groucho for so long, I guess you sort of think like Groucho after a while, and it still is the same character, but you can come up with your own ad libs. It must be kind of fun as an actor.
Oh, it's fantastic. I mean, because it is an acting role. You know, some people say, "What do I refer to it as an impersonation or imitation?" And I approached it, initially as an acting role. This is a great life, and I was fortunate to be able to portray this very unique American life in a big way. So when it comes to performing, it's like putting a glove on for me. It's second nature for me. And the improv he was such a great improv artist back in his Broadway days in the 20s, and that went through. They would improv shit in the movies, and they'd film that, and then people would remember it from You Bet Your Life. How come You Bet Your Life? Say the secret word and divide an extra $100. It's a common way, something you see every day. And that's the show which he had a great deal of interplay with the public. So quite honestly, some of it was improvised, some of it was set and on a teleprompter, but it was the combination that worked, and the fact that he made what was written material seem improvised. I did the same thing. My show is structured. There are great songs. I love when Groucho sings. I love him singing "Lady is a Tattooed Lady," or "The Captain's Ball," "The African Explorer." All these great songs, many that Talma and Ruby wrote. A lot of wordplay, outrageous, and he had this amazing ability to combine physical humor with verbal humor, and I don't think any other comedian that we've produced, this country's produced, has come close. And I try every night. I say, share the joy, Frank. Share the joy with an audience. The joy that I felt when I first saw Groucho when I was 9 years old. I was exhilarated by Groucho, and I still am exhilarated by Groucho Marx and his humor. He was saying things that only he could get away with, and he was doing things that only he could get away with in the movies and on television, and in his life to some extent. And so, we'd all play by the rules, and here Groucho was calling a spade a spade. I mean, it's still a wonderful thing to be able to share. And what I'm seeing are younger people in the audience. I love seeing families there and couples bringing their kids in a mix of ages. I've always said you don't have to be a Groucho fan or a Marx Brothers fan to enjoy the show. If you're a comedy fan and want to have a good laugh, this is the right show to see.
Mm. Yeah, you mentioned you were 9. I think I was about that same age. I think you grew up in the L.A. area, if I'm not mistaken. You told me.
I grew up in the Pasadena area. I grew up in a little town called Sierra Madre.
Yeah, I grew up in New York. I mean, I think most, at least boys anyway, kind of gravitated to the Groucho Marx or Marx Brothers movies, and then in New York they showed the You Bet Your Life in syndication. I think 11 o'clock at night on Channel 11, and that's really where I think I got the real interest in Groucho, just watching him work, like you said, with those guests that he had on there. That was brilliant television.
He was great. It's so funny. We must be about the same age.
I think we are, yeah.
In reruns too. In 1974 and 75, the show went into syndication, and the re-syndication, I should say. And there it was, 11 o'clock at night. I would sneak out of my room and watch him, in a little TV set,
right,
because I wanted to see Groucho. And you're right. In the 70s, there was a lot going on. A lot of guys our age, teenagers and preteens, we loved him because he was so fearless. His comedy is fearless. The Marx Brothers are fearless, and we're mostly fearful people. And here was this fearless, wild man, raising hell in very proper settings, and that's a thrill. But when we were kids watching him on You Bet Your Life and reruns, his movies were also being shown on television.
That's right. Yeah.
And in revival houses. He was still alive. He was in his mid-80s. And so there was really, the three ages of Groucho are out there. The Groucho of the films, the middle-aged Groucho of You Bet Your Life, which you and I were watching in reruns, and the Groucho of the 1970s, who was in his 80s. And I got to see Groucho just about a year before he passed away. I was a boy. I was 13 years old, and my father took me to see him at the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles. And he shows up 3 hours late, and there were 1,000 people to see him. And we were wondering, where's Groucho? He finally shows up, and he's wearing his trademark beret and those thick glasses and a sports coat, and he had a little white mustache. It was very slow moving, and you were a fan, as I was, still am. pulled him like a duckling to the stage. Everybody else was shooed away, but I felt that was my place to be next to Groucho. So I'm walking with Groucho. I mean, I felt that drawn to him, and it's so funny. I've made part of my career has been based on that connection. But he finally gets to the podium, and he's mumbling through the first part of this presentation, talking. You know, and no one can hear him. Can you hear me? No response. I mean, you can hear a heartbeat. We want Groucho to be Groucho, and he's glassy-eyed, and he looks very ill. Until somebody asks Groucho the question, Groucho, are you making any new Marx Brothers movies? There's a long pause, and Groucho says, oh, I'm answering stupid questions. And 1,000 people broke into it. This went absolutely crazy. The tension was broken, and people... And then it started to roll. A woman asked Groucho, Groucho, are you making any new... No, Groucho, what do you dream about? And he looked at her and said, not you. So it was beautiful. I mean, the body was shot, but his mind was still operating. And it was a beautiful thing. You know, he had a 72-year career. And I feel, like I said, I feel really, really privileged to be able to share his style. And that's what anything with Groucho is about, this style of humor, this brash American style. I have a lot of energy. I'm relentless. I like to work with an audience. I like to signal style. And I like to conjure up his spirit. And I think there's a written here. He's been gone since 1977.
77, right?
And he's still referenced. You could barely pick up a magazine or newspaper without a Groucho quote or a reference in this day and age. It tells you a lot about his impact. And that persona is so distinct. You know, his point of view, that attitude he had. And his look is really the face of comedy, I feel. And who knew when I was a boy that I picked the right guy to emulate and to be inspired by? Because all the work, as you had referenced before, Doug, has been inspired by Groucho. I wanted to read because Groucho was literate. And there's a lot of great wordplay in those movies, those Marx Brothers movies. One morning, I shot an elephant in my pajamas. Probably got in my pajamas, I don't know. I mean, that's a great line. He didn't write it, but he is the line. That sums up his kind of humor, the puns. And so much of comedy has been influenced by Groucho, and all the great comedians that have followed will tip their hats.
Oh, yeah.
To his wit and intelligence and commitment and longevity. And that's why it's fun to still be out there being the guy. You talked about, you know, that you and I were at that age when we loved him as kids. I play all time. I played in so many towns. I was in Easton, Pennsylvania a few years ago, and it was a big theater. We had 1,200 people in the audience. That's a lot of people for a show like this. Comedians is long gone, but people were there, all ages, and there was a long line in the lobby afterward for autographs and so forth. And a guy my age, in his 40s, came up to me and said, "You're the guy." So what do you mean? He goes, "You're the guy. We all wanted to be Groucho. You're the guy that got to be Groucho." And I knew exactly what he meant.
Yeah.
Because we all wanted to speak to our teachers this way, the way Groucho spoke. To Margaret Dupont, I wanted to talk to my parents and all grown-ups the way he did. And so, getting back to what you're saying, we related to this impudence. You know, he did call it the way he saw it, and it was refreshing. And I learned that, you can see life in a different way, and that's what comedians can do for us, good comedians. And I always say, comedians are truth tellers, and Groucho was a truth teller.
He told the truth, didn't he?
That's it's a special quality he does that, huh?
Yeah. We're talking with Frank Ferrante. He'll be performing this Sunday. It's the 26th of February up at the Tarpon Springs Performing Arts Center, 2 p.m. Show. Frank, I don't know if you ever saw these videos. I found them from the Museum of TV in New York when I've been up there on a visit. I guess some of them are on YouTube. Did you ever see when Groucho went on the Jackie Gleason show? I think it was 67 or 68, and just those two guys working together alone on the stage. It was brilliant. Have you seen that clip at all?
No, I've seen it. It's some of my favorite work that Groucho did in the 60s. And you see, Groucho's older. He's pushing 80.
He's got to be in his 70s at least, right? Yeah.
Yeah, he's about 77, 78. And Gleason's in his prime.
Yeah.
Television. And you see the respect that Jackie Gleason has for Groucho.
Oh, yeah.
He treats them well, delicately, with reverence, and they are funny together. And it's a wonderful. It's worth people checking out YouTube to see Gleason and to search Gleason and Groucho.
They do the Gallagher and Sheen too, which is a really old routine, but they kind of updated it. It's very funny.
They do, and Sheen was Groucho's uncle.
His uncle, yeah.
Gallagher and Sheen was the great vaudeville team in the 1910s and 1920s, and it's the reason the Marx Brothers went into show business. Minnie Marx was the sister of Al Sheen at Gallagher and Sheen, and she figured if her brother can do it, her sons could do it. And she made it a mission to get her sons when they were teenagers on the stage, and she succeeded. And but you know it's interesting. Those comedians, Bob Hope was once asked who was the greatest comedian of all time. This is probably the 50s, and this is the time when there was Sid Caesar and Jack Benny,
Milton
and
Berle,
Allen, and you can get Berle. It goes on. And Hope said, for my money, Groucho Marx is the best. He's the wittiest, and he's the most envied comedian among comedians because of his facility to improvise. It was a beautiful thing. And so a lot of these comedians, and they're difficult. They could be a difficult lot. Those comedians, a very competitive world.
Oh yeah.
The comedians have a reputation for being dark, but Groucho was across the board respected by his peers and certainly those that came after. Groucho was a great proponent of young talent. He loved Steve Allen, and he would go and he would talk about talent, in the 50s and 60s. He wasn't the kind of, there were a lot of performers of Groucho's ilk who were huge, who just keep their mouth shut. But Groucho was out there promoting young talents who were trying to break through. He was also an extremely loyal friend. He kept friendships for decades. People like Gary Rootby, who wrote his songs like "Hooray for Captain Spaulding."
Right.
He had a lot of writer friends. He respected the written word, and he respected his audiences. There was an intelligence there, and I tried to uphold his respect. Audiences smell garbage, and I try to be as I'm always respectful of an audience in terms of the presentation. You want to give them 100% of what you've got in terms of your energy.
Oh yeah.
And Groucho, it's the only way you can survive, too. Groucho came from a very poor upbringing. His parents were immigrants, and they were poor, and they're self-made, the Marx Brothers. And really a fascinating American tale. And it's really a pleasure to be able to kind of continue to share that story with audiences really throughout the world.
Groucho did some great talk show appearances. There's some wonderful interviews with Dick Cavett. I know, of course, Tonight Show, he was the first man to introduce Johnny Carson when Carson took over, but did a lot of interviews with Cavett in later years, I guess the late 60s. There's some color interviews you can see with that occasionally on TV. But he was a great talk show guest, wasn't he?
I think he was a gold mine for a show like Cavett and for Carson. He didn't know he was going to stay either next, and there was something very, he could be startling. He would say what was on his mind.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's part of what's thrilling about Groucho. You could say the same thing about. It's hard for us to really understand the impact that Groucho and the Marx Brothers had in the 1910s and the 20s, because we've seen so much comedy like it since then, and the world has certainly changed. But when they were first on the scene, Doug, and I remember Cavett, of all people, said his father saw the Marx Brothers in Nebraska.
Yeah.
Where Cavett was raised. And Cavett's father said, we'd never seen anything like these guys. It was like a tornado that hit town. They literally were ripping up floorboards, and the energy of these four male comedians, representing all styles of comedy. Groucho, the fast talker, Harpo, the mute, harp-playing one, and Chico, the Italian accented, piano-playing con man, Zeppo, who was a straight man. And, if the four of them together, do you imagine the energy?
Oh, man.
The attack they had? It must have been a thrill. I always had this fantasy of going back in time and seeing the Marx Brothers on Broadway and Animal Crackers or the Coconuts. What it would have been like to see them in their prime. It must have been something else. But so there was a sense of that they were always. Groucho had a spontaneous audience knows that. We all know that. Watching, someone who's very proper, someone who's a Midwest boy like Cabot or Carson. It's fun to see them play straight to Groucho.
Oh yeah.
It was
I always felt bad for Zeppo. He didn't have any good lines in the movies.
No, I think his best line in the movies was "Yes, sir."
Yeah, is it yes sir or take a letter, and he'd take the letter.
Yes.
That's all he got to do in the movies.
Yeah.
But I heard he was one of the funniest guys off stage. They said of the brothers. That's what I heard.
Yeah,
So.
the Groucho claims, and in the show I do, I mention the fact I talk about Zeppo, and Groucho says in real life, Zeppo was the funniest of us all.
Yeah.
But I guess more lunatics than the act would have been too much. And there was a great age difference. Zeppo was 10, 11 years younger than Groucho, 14 years younger than Chico. So when Zeppo came along, there was only that slot left.
Right.
They replaced another brother named Gummo.
Gummo,
on
right.
stage as a straight man. But that there was humor built into these guys. It's hard to believe they were brothers. The older I get, the more I marvel at that. The fact that these talents were related.
Yeah.
The same parents, because they're so good individually, and together they're dynamite.
Zeppo married at one time, or actually the first husband of Frank Sinatra's wife. I just read her book about Frank, and she talks about Zeppo and that, which was kind of interesting. Have you read that?
No, I haven't, but
Yeah.
I met her this past year. I did a benefit in Rancho Mirage for Harpo's son for MS, and Barbara Marx Sinatra was there. I got to meet her and took some photos with Barbara.
Oh, great.
That's right. She was married to Zeppo for a while.
Yeah.
Before Sinatra. And Sinatra did a movie with Groucho called Double Dynamite.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, they did work together.
In the early
Right.
50s. Two of my favorites. Groucho and Sinatra in one film is a lot of fun. They sing together. It's not a great film, but there's some fun moments in that film.
Yeah, that must have been fun off the set too with those two guys.
Yeah, it's funny. It must have been. And Groucho said that always was very complimentary of Frank Sinatra. Said he was a natural director, had a director's mind, and I thought that was interesting. And they stayed friendly through up into Groucho's passing. But there's so much great theater and show business history that's there that I enjoy, that I love sharing with an audience.
Oh yeah.
But again, I think probably what's most thrilling for me is the interplay, the interaction.
How does the show? I mean, I know you say you do about 30 minutes of the show is improvised, but over the years, do you change any part of the performance as far as you get more research, more stories that you've heard maybe you didn't hear before? Do you add that into the show?
Not so much. What has happened over the years, Doug, is that in lieu of set material storytelling, I've opted for the improvisation because that's what the audience responds to the most, and it's what I enjoy doing the most, and it's what makes the show fresh and crackle. Really, if you want to see Groucho at his best, you can Netflix Duck Soup.
Right.
But if you want to get a feeling of what it may have been like to see him live, I'd like to think that the show gives a sense of that experience. So to answer your question, we're always honing. I've worked with the same music director, Jim Firmston, since 1984.
Oh wow.
So we're always trying to find ways to be a stronger show. The show is, I think, it's just a terrific show. But we're creative people, so we're always looking for ways to make it even better. It's just funny to think that we've done the show.
Sure.
For 20 years, and the last dozen years we've done, like I said, and we've probably done about 400 cities in the last dozen years. That's a lot of cities.
That is.
But the show structure is pretty much there. I do it's anecdotal. I do talk about the Marx Brothers. I talk about Harpo and Chico and Zeppo and Gummo. I talk about Margaret Dumas, who was the great straight woman in the movie. I do a whole homage to her. I sing the songs of that period of the Broadway shows in the film. I do some of the one-liners, and it's very free-flowing piece. And I go off into the audience and work the crowd, and that's really the sense of it.
Do you think she? I mean, obviously, she knew the script and all that. Do you think she sort of knew what was going on? Though she always had kind of a look in her eye, like she really was surprised at what Groucho was saying to her.
Well, Groucho always said, Groucho claimed that she did not know what was going on, and that Margaret Dumas would say, Julius, what are they laughing at? She could never bring herself. She could never bring herself to call him Groucho even. But they'd be upstage of her, and she didn't know what they were doing because realize they toured they toured and they played Broadway with Margaret Dumas.
Oh, she did the stage as well. Okay, I didn't know that. Yeah.
She did stage. She did the Coconuts and Animal Crackers. So they did a pre-Broadway tour. They do a Broadway run. They do a post-Broadway run. They film the movies, and then she's in Animal Crackers, Coconuts, Duck Soup. She's in Night at the Opera.
Night at the Opera, Day of the Races. Yeah.
At the Circus, Big Store, and she really was a perfect straight woman for Groucho. Great compliment. This kind of perverse romance they had. She took a lot of his ribbing, but somehow they were satisfied with being with each other. It works. But he's got great lines with her. Some of the funniest lines he has. And they're quite. He's impudent. He's as impudent as he can be. Those things are like him. I can see you right now in the kitchen bending over a hot stove, but I can't see the stove. Come, say the word and never see me again, Gloria. I'll meet you tonight under the moon. I can see it now, just you and the moon. You wear a necktie, so I'll know you. Why don't you beat it? Ahead they're going to tear you down and put up an office building where you're standing. You can leave in a taxi. If you can't leave in a taxi, you can leave in a huff. If that's too soon, you can leave in a minute and a huff. You know, I haven't stopped talking since I came here. You must have been vaccinated with the phonograph, Why don't you pull up a couple of chairs and sit down? It was relentless with her, and this was their idea of love making. She looked at him like, what are you saying to me?
I know.
But we love them together. They're great together, and she's a terrific actress.
Well, Frank, I know the people up in Tarpon Springs, Tampa Bay area, are going to get a kick out of seeing not only you, but kind of remembering the great Groucho Marx and An Evening with Groucho, 2 p.m. show coming up this Sunday, February 26th. And Frank, give out, I know you have a great website with all the information if people want to get tickets or follow you. What's the website?
Yeah, there's a couple websites. There's eveningwithgroucho.com and grouchoworld.com. And you can also become a Facebook friend for An Evening with Groucho. And we update the fans of the show regularly. So, yeah, thank you for that.
Great. Yeah, I go on there all the time. Keep up with you on Facebook and some of the other characters you do. But there's nothing like Groucho, right?
Well, he's my hero.
He really is.
So, yes, I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing you and being back in Florida.
Frank, I know we kept.
Your time, Doug.
No problem. We kept. I know a little longer than we said, but when you get me talking about it and you talking about Groucho, we could probably do hours. But it was fun to talk to you today, and we look forward to. I know you said next year you'll be back in Florida again, so we'll definitely have you on at that time as well.
I appreciate that. Until then, hello. We must be going.